Okay, so last Friday, after my show, the Mueller report essentially broke in the media. At least the top line of the Mueller report broke in the media. No new indictments. And then over the weekend, we found out from Attorney General Barr, William Barr, that not only would there be no indictments, there was no evidence of collusion, and that President Trump was not going to be indicted on obstruction, that there was no clear evidence of obstruction. We're going to get to Barr's report in just 1 second. But first, I need to remind you where we came from, how we got here, because it's been 2 long years. I feel like the old lady at the end of Titanic. It's been 84 years. It's been 2 long years since we started this whole debacle with the claim that President Trump was in cahoots with the Russians, was working hand in glove with Vladimir Putin in order to skew the results of the 2016 election, that he and his campaign had been working with Putin in order to hack the DNC, reveal the emails, come after Hillary Clinton, and generally destroy electoral democracy in the United States. And this was the constantly repeated refrain. For 2 years, CNN ran with this. For 2 years, MSNBC ran with this. For 2 years, the Washington Post and the New York Times and everybody ran with this. The Democrats made it their talking point. It was their chief talking point that President Trump was not actually the legitimate president of the United States. Instead, he had been installed by Russian fiat through nefarious means. Hillary Clinton was the actual real president of the United States. So here is just a quick montage of some of the members of the media and Democrats claiming that President Trump was guilty of the gravest sort of treason.
There are indictments in this president's future.
That's a bombshell.
The bombshell.
This bombshell.
Drop the bombshell.
Bombshell accusation. Bombshell accusation.
And at that point, we are in high crimes and misdemeanor, and we are in impeachment territory.
Right.
This president needs to be impeached.
Impeachment is the remedy. I mean, the president can't...
It's the only remedy.
There's outright treason. I mean, there is no question.
I think he's feeling the noose around his neck.
The noose is tightening.
And I think they're shocked that the noose is tightening.
He may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
Well, I think they're all going to end up together in prison, and maybe that's a good thing. Oh, my God.
Okay, that's legitimately virtually every major member of MSNBC and CNN. That was Adam Schiff, of course. You heard Joy Behar at the very end. And this was the conventional wisdom. Okay, the conventional wisdom was that President Trump was going to do jail time. At the very least, he would be impeached, that the evidence would come out. People were going nuts over all of this stuff. I mean, for goodness sake, people were selling votive candles of Robert Mueller online, on Etsy, like worship candles of Robert Mueller. SNL did an entire number where they say at Christmas time called All I Want for Christmas Is You, and it was a picture of Bob Mueller in the background. Bob Mueller was the Deus Ex Machina. Bob Mueller was the apocalypse come to earth. Bob Mueller was final justice come for President Trump. That was their case. This is where they were going. And you had high-ranking members of U.S. intelligence, people like John Brennan, the former head of the CIA under Obama, who was there while all of this was going on in 2016. You had John Brennan on MSNBC 2 weeks ago suggesting that President Trump was headed for jail.
Friday is the day that the grand jury indictments come down. And also this Friday is better than next Friday because next Friday is the 15th of March, which is the Ides of March. And I don't think Robert Mueller will want to have that dramatic flair of the Ides of March when he is going to be delivering what I think are going to be his indictments, the final indictments, as well as the report that he gives to the Attorney General. So if anybody from the Trump family, an extended family, is going to be indicted, it would be in the final act of Mueller's investigation.
Okay, so this was John Brennan, okay? Remember, the former head of the CIA. And it was a mess of former intelligence heads saying this sort of stuff. It was Andrew McCabe, the ousted former acting FBI director who was fired for lying to the FBI, you'll recall. He lost his pension because he was lying to the FBI about leaking to the media. And just in the last few weeks, he suggested that President Trump, it was quite possible that President Trump was a Russian asset, an active Russian asset. This is Andrew McCabe. Again, this was the former acting FBI director. These are not low-ranking people. These are the heads of our intelligence agencies. These are our talking heads in the media, the people we are supposed to trust the most. Now, Matt Taibbi, who I generally disagree with over at Rolling Stone. He once wrote one of the worst profiles of Andrew Breitbart ever. He wrote a terrible, terrible eulogy of Andrew after he died. But Matt Taibbi has a piece today talking about how this is the media's WMD. I think that's an understatement. The media humiliated themselves. Our intelligence agencies, at least the leaders of them, people like James Comey, as we'll see, and Andrew McCabe, humiliated themselves. Here's Andrew McCabe explaining that President Trump may indeed have been a Russian asset.
I did my job.
I stood up to the obligations of my office. When we're presented with facts, we made hard decisions that we knew would be tough on the organization, would be tough on us personally. Look what I've gone through as a result of those decisions. But we did them anyway because we were committed to our responsibilities and serving this country.
Do you still believe the president could be a Russian asset?
I think it's possible. I think that's why we started our investigation, and I'm really anxious to see where Director Mueller concludes.
What the actual F? And I remember when he said this on the air, I played it on the show the next day, and I said to myself, I said it openly, what is he talking about? How exactly is he upholding any standard of intelligence behavior here? Isn't the proper response, I haven't seen any evidence of that? How is it? It's possible. Yes, it's possible that he descended from the moon. It's possible that President Trump is actually the minion of the Martian, the little Martian from the Warner Brothers cartoons. There are lots of things that are possible, but it is your job as the former head of the FBI to maintain the integrity of your institution. That's not what any of these people did. And of course, then there were the people who had a vested interest in this. Then there were the Democrats. You have Hillary Clinton, who legitimately said that President Trump guided the Russians. He provided them a roadmap. The Russians never could have figured out something like Facebook without President Trump, who has never used a computer, basically, guiding them around the interwebs.
The Russians, in my opinion, and based on the intel and counter-intel people I've talked to, could not have known how best to weaponize that information unless they had been guided. And here's
guided by Americans.
Guided by Americans and guided by people who had, polling and data information.
Who is that? But you're leaning Trump.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm leaning Trump. I think it's pretty hard not to.
Oh, yeah, of course it was Trump. It was Trump who stole the election from her. It wasn't that she was a garbage candidate who lost because she ran a garbage campaign to the worst candidate in American history, Donald Trump. I mean, I know that we've created this magical world in which Trump was this world-beating candidate. President Trump had a tape released on him a month before the election in which he said that he was grabbing women by the genitals and then he beat Hillary Clinton. That's how bad a candidate she was. That's why she lost, not because of the Ruskies and not because President Trump was working with Vladimir Putin hand in glove. And then this has dripped down to legitimately every level of the Democratic Party. This myth-making has dripped down to it's become the conventional wisdom. Beto O'Rourke, yesterday, who will jump on any object he could possibly find. And somebody needs to start an account on Twitter called Beto Jumps on Objects, because that's pretty much what he does at this point. He just goes up to tables, he jumps on them. He goes up to small children, he jumps on them. Well, yesterday he jumped on an object, and then he suggests in front of a crowd that President Trump sought to collude with the Russians beyond the shadow of a doubt. He said this legitimately about 2 hours before William Barr dropped his letter.
You have a president who, in my opinion, beyond the shadow of a doubt, sought to, however ham-handedly, collude with the Russian government, a foreign power, to undermine and influence our elections.
Okay, Okay, so he says all this, and every Democrat has basically echoed this. Maybe President Trump will be impeached on this. Maybe President Trump committed treason. Maybe President Trump was guilty. The entire goal of this was to create a massive shadow over the first couple of years of President Trump's presidency at a very minimum. Time magazine, you'll recall, ran a full cover in which it showed the White House shading into the Kremlin. So halfway across the Time magazine cover, the White House suddenly becomes the Kremlin because the Kremlin is owning and operating the White House. Now, here's the reality. The Kremlin owned and operated the media in the sense that the media did exactly what Vladimir Putin wanted. What Vladimir Putin wanted was to interfere in the election and then have the media run with whatever narrative they felt was most conducive to their point of view and tear the country apart. And they did it. They did it with ease. Now, here's the thing. It wasn't that hard to avoid this error. And forget about being on taking a strong stand in favor of the idea that this was all a mockery or that this is all nonsense. There was a very easy position available to everyone, right, left, and center. The easy position was, I don't know. That was the easy position because nobody knew, right? I didn't know. Mueller may have come down yesterday or Friday. He could have come down with a report that said precisely the reverse. I didn't know. You didn't know. Nobody knew. Now, there were indicators that this report was not going to be a bombshell. There were indicators that there were members of the intelligence community who hated President Trump. There were indicators that nobody had seriously been indicted in the collusion scandal for collusion. They'd been indicted for lying to the FBI. But you didn't even have to leap to the conclusion that this was all some sort of giant setup to simply say, listen, we can wait for the evidence to come out. Bob Mueller has a record as being a good prosecutor and a decent man. And there's no reason to suspect that he is going to come out and destroy President Trump. I'll get to that in just 1 second.